Welcome, everyone. We're going to take a few minutes while people access the webinar. So please just wait. Bienvenidos. Vamos a esperar unos momentos mientras las personas llegan al webinar. Welcome, everybody, to the webinar with LCYC and NIRP, Northwest Immigrant Rights Project. We are just waiting for more people to join, and we'll start shortly. Welcome, everyone. My name is Chuck Duarte White. I'm here with Moshte Oskuyan, and we are just waiting for people to join. And we will, at that point, explain how to get the Spanish interpretation and for the other languages. Bienvenidos. Me llamo Chuck Duarte White y estoy aquí con Moshte Oskuyan. Vamos a esperar hasta que la gente llega y luego vamos a explicar cómo accesar la interpretación de español y otras lenguas. Esperen, por favor.
Chach, I think it's okay to get started with the instructions. We've got about 700 people in, and we're expecting about 1,500.
Okay, thank you, Rex. Good evening and welcome to the Immigrant Safety Plan and Know Your Rights webinar for the community. My name is Chach Duarte White, and I am a lawyer with Legal Counsel for Youth and Children, and I'm here with my colleague, friend, and lawyer, Moshte Oskuyan from Northwest Immigrant Rights Project. We are going to try to speak a little slower because we also have interpreters that are working on this. Bienvenidos y buenas tardes al taller sobre el Plan de Seguridad para Inmigrantes y para conocer sus derechos para la comunidad. Mi nombre es Chach Duarte White y soy abogada de Abogados para Jóvenes y Niños y estoy aquí con mi colega, amiga y abogada Moshte Oskuyan del Proyecto para los Derechos del Inmigrante del Noroeste. We also have a Spanish audio channel to listen to the presentation in Spanish. To enable this, click Interpretation button below and click on Spanish. You may first need to click on the More button with 3 dots, then Interpretation. También tenemos un canal de audio en español para escuchar la presentación en español. Para habilitar esto, hagan clic en el botón Interpretación a continuación y hagan clic en español. Es posible que primero tenga que hacer clic en el botón más con 3 puntos y a continuación en interpretación. We have the slides translated into Spanish and available at this link. La presentación va a ser disponible en un enlace que vamos a poner en el chat. We also have captions available in many languages. To access captions in your language, go to the bottom ribbon and click the captions button. Click the translation toggle button on, then select English as the speaking language and your desired language as the captions language. Para acceder a los subtítulos en su idioma, vaya a la cinta inferior y haga clic en el botón Subtítulos. Hagan clic en el botón de alternancia traducción. Luego seleccionan el inglés como idioma hablado y el idioma que deseas como idioma de los subtítulos. Please ask questions in chat at any time. We will do our best to answer them at the end, but this is a very large webinar. Over 1,500 people have registered, and we will probably not have time to answer every question, but we will do our best. Por favor, hagan preguntas en el chat. En cualquier momento haremos todo lo posible para responderles al final, pero este es un taller muy grande. Más de 1,500 personas han registrado y probablemente no tendremos tiempo para responder todas las preguntas, pero haremos todo lo posible. Please don't ask specific questions about your case or your situation. We can only answer general questions. This is recorded and will be posted afterwards. So if a question is too specific, we won't answer it. We want to make sure we keep everything anonymous, and that is how we'll make sure. Por favor, hagan preguntas a lo largo del seminario web en el chat y le responderemos al final. Por favor, no comparten información personal ni hagan preguntas específicas de cada caso. Okay, I am now going to share my screen and give me 1 second to start my part of the presentation. And then Moshte will ask me questions, and then she will do her part of the presentation and I will ask her questions. Here we go. Share screen. All right. Good presentation mode. Okay. Today we are going to talk about the Immigrant Safety Plan. And this is our community training. And again, I said, my name is Chach Duarte White. I'm an attorney with Legal Counsel for Youth and Children. And Moshte Oskuyan is here with Northwest Immigrant Rights Project, and she will be doing Know Your Rights. We're going to talk about the safety plan. What is the safety plan? Why do we need it? What's the goal? Who is it for? What do you do with it? And the limitations. And I want to talk first about why I wrote the safety plan. I wrote it in 2016 when Trump took office for the first time, and I wrote it for my mother. My mother had about a sixth grade education. She passed away about 15 years ago. And she had legal permanent residence and had a green card, but she did not speak much English. And she would have been worried if she would have been detained or deported, what happened to her children. I also wrote it for my father that while he was an American citizen, he was racially profiled and could have been detained. My father had a high school education, and I thought he could help my mother fill it out. So that's why we want to make sure that everybody has the ability to fill this out for their children. And anybody right now who has a child should work on the safety plan. The goal of the plan is to gather all important documents of each child, and then to prepare a third party, so a person that is not a parent, to care for the child in the event that the parent is detained or deported. And frankly, it can happen if a person gets in a car accident. Who's going to take care of the children? And then you want to be able to give the rights of the parents to this third party. So if I pick my brother who's going to care for my children, I want to give him my rights while the parent is not available. And then we want to plan to put the child in the best possible position if the parent is unavailable to care for the child. So how does a parent pick a third party, a person that's going to care for your child? It has to be someone over the age of 18. And the safety plan is only good for children under the age of 18. In the United States, once a child reaches the age of 18, they are an adult, and the parents technically do not have any legal responsibility or authority over that child. Ideally, it's someone that has been documented in the United States, and if they can be a US citizen. Whoever you pick to take care of your child has to be able to care for your child emotionally, financially, and however else you would like that person to care for your child. Ideally, the person is local, so close so that they can physically get your child. For example, if I have a 6-year-old that goes to school, I want someone close by that can pick up my child if I'm detained or deported. However, you can also have an alternate if someone is not local. So for example, I could name my neighbor that could pick up my child and have my child for 1 or 2 days. And my brother, who might live in California, is where I want my child to actually be longer term. And then we want someone who you trust to carry out the parent's wishes when it comes to the child. In the safety plan, and you could find it on our website, it includes information about your school and daycare emergency contact information, immunization and medical records, 2 very important documents. One is the parent's intention for care of the minor child, and the other one is the durable power of attorney for parental powers, and we're going to talk about these. It also explains how to get birth certificates, how to get Social Security cards if your child was born in the United States, and how you should get passports for your children. For the school and daycare emergency contact, each school has their own form or electronic way that you list who can pick up the child if you are not available. For example, if I want my brother to pick up my child and he is not on the school emergency contact list, he will not be able to pick up my child. They have to be there. The schools legally cannot release a child to someone who is not on their list. And the person who will be making decisions for the child should be on the list. So you might have to include your neighbor and my brother. And then every school and daycare has different forms. If you have 3 children at 3 different schools, you need to talk to each school to make sure that your form is up to date. Child immunization and medical records, make sure they are up to date. Many children cannot go to school if their medical records or their immunizations are not up to date. And then get the latest records that you have. You can look at your school or your doctor or Washington Health Department. The other thing that's very important is having other specialist information. If your child has allergies or wears glasses or has any special needs or their dentist, it's important to have this information for the person who's going to care for your child. The parent's intention for the care of a minor child is a specific document that we have in the safety plan that you can fill out for your child. Basically, what it says is, me as the parent, what do I want to happen for my child if I'm unavailable? So the child would remain with who? It has to be someone, again, over 18, ideally a relative. And so I might say, I want my brother to be the person. But my brother lives in California, so I'm going to name my neighbor as the first person. And as soon as my brother shows up, it goes to my brother. You can write in other plans. We put a space for other so that you can include other plans just in case none of the options that we have listed works for your family. The other thing we have written in this intention is if you want the child reunited with you wherever you are. So say you get detained and let's say unfortunately you get deported. You may want, if you have a 2-year-old, you may want that 2-year-old to be reunited with you in your home country. You may want your 17-year-old to stay here and finish high school. So they might be different for each child. We are asking people, if you want a child reunited with you in your home country, please find contact information in that country where someone can get a hold of you. This might be friends that you have in your country. Include the information so that they can find you. It might be your parents, it might be other family members. Each parent, and when I say parent, I am talking about who is on the birth certificate of the child. Each person on the birth certificate needs to sign this document. If one parent is not available, they can sign later with a notary, or you can sign with 2 witnesses. If you use 2 witnesses, they should not be the person you're going to leave the child with, and they really shouldn't be related to you if possible. The second important document is what's called the power of attorney. This gives the third party, the non-parent, so in my example, my brother, the ability to make education, medical, and travel decisions for the child. As it should be the same person at the school and daycare list, and then also the parent's intention. The way the law works, it says it's valid for 24 months. You could decide it is valid starting the date you signed it, or it can be valid when it actually starts, when the person actually starts using it. It's also revocable. So if I'm giving my brother the rights to my children, my rights, I can revoke it. I can, at any point in time, write him a letter and say, you no longer have those rights. Again, if one parent is not available, we want them to sign if possible. If you have a reason that another parent is not available, for example, they passed away, you can check that box and include their death certificate. If you have a protection order against that parent, include those documents. If you have any kind of court documents regarding the children, include those documents. Birth certificates. It's really important that you get them, whether they're in this country or a different country. And they really need to be an original or a certified birth certificate. Many people have copies. These are hard documents to get without a parent getting them. And so if you're detained or deported, you might not be available to sign to get these documents. Make sure the spellings and names are accurate and consistent in all of these documents. Many people have multiple names. Make sure they are consistent. Check to see on a child's birth certificate if there's a mother and a father listed. Again, with all of these documents, whoever is on that birth certificate is considered the parent, unless you have some other court document that says another person is the parent. Usually the mother will be listed because she was there. The father may not be listed. Each state has a different process to get birth certificates. If your child was born in Washington, it's one process. If they were born in Idaho, it's a different process. So you have to look to see which state they're from and then how do you get them. If you have a child that's born outside of this country, you want to work with your consulate to ask to get a copy of an original or a certified copy of their birth certificate. In the United States, there can be a fee up to $40.50, but it varies. Social Security cards. This applies to US citizens. Children born in the United States all should have a Social Security card. Many people know the Social Security number. Get a copy of the card. because that child might need that original copy of the card. If a parent doesn't have status, it should not matter. Nobody should be asking about your status. It's all about the child, and there is no fee. This is also one of these important documents. You do not want people to get a hold of their Social Security card or their number because we don't want identity fraud. So be careful with this document. Passports. If you can afford it, please get passports. U.S. citizens should get passports as soon as possible. They are extremely hard to get without parents actually signing for them. If your child is under the age of 16, they will not give them a passport without the parent signing for them. They usually require, again, signatures from both parents. If both parents are on the birth certificate, there is a way to do it with an affidavit, which is a declaration from the parent that isn't available. But you have to get that parent to sign. You are going to have to make an appointment, and it's usually done through post office. And then you'll have to get passport photos. They are a bit expensive, so the fees are around $105. If your child is also a citizen from a different country, it's very helpful to have a passport from that country. It's possible they will need it in order to travel to that home country, and maybe they also, it serves as their identification in that country, and it can help for possible benefits. It's important to make sure that these documents do not get lost. The other reason to get a U.S. passport is if a child gets reunited with you in a different country, they can't get back into the United States without that U.S. passport unless they have other documentation that allows them in. Once you get all this paperwork, what do you do with it? Every child needs a file or a shoebox or a place that will hold all of the paperwork for each child. The way I like to think of it, I have 3 children. Each child would have a shoebox. I put their name on the outside of it, and I put all of the original paperwork here. I also might create an electronic copy if possible on a computer, but do not put these documents on your phone. These are really important documents, and if you lose your phone, someone can get access to them. We ask that people make 3 copies of the intention and the power of attorney. The original should go to the third party, in my example, my brother, so he has it. And then a copy should be for me. And then a that I would put in the shoebox. And then I would put a copy either I'd give it to my child if they understand and they're old enough. And if they're young, I might put it in a plastic bag and put it in their backpack or their diaper bag so that if someone does not show up to pick them up, someone might find that document and then call that person. The other thing to make sure is that you have talked with the third party. I have to have talked with my brother so that he knows that he has to do this if I'm not able, and he agrees to care for my child. So you need to have those conversations. The other thing I will say that's important, let's say my shoebox is in my apartment, in my closet. My brother has to be able to get to that shoebox. If he is not on my lease, the landlord cannot let him into my apartment. So you might want to give him a key. Or if your child is old enough, they have a key and they can make sure that my brother can get to those documents. This is a tough topic to talk about. I know people are scared, and I'm sorry. It is not a good time, but this is important. This is something you can do now in the event that something happens. Do you have to notarize? You don't have to. The documents are a little bit stronger, but you can do it with 2 witnesses. People ask, does this transfer legal custody? The answer is no. The only way to transfer legal custody is to do it through a court proceeding through family law. But what it does is it provides another person all the rights that a parent has for a short amount of time. We talked about if a parent's not available, if the other parent just, you don't like that person, figure out how to talk about it so you both can sign the documents. If you cannot find that other parent, or let's say they abandoned the child 10 years ago and they're in a different country, you could write that in the documents and sign it with one parent. I don't know if they'll be honored, but you can try. What to do with dual citizen children? We talked about getting them their documents in both countries. If you do not have a third party or third person that can pick up your children, what will happen is your child will not get picked up from school. At some point, the teachers are going to call the police. When the police are called, they are going to call CPS, which is Child Protective Services. Child Protective Services will have to grab your child and put them in foster care, at least for a few days, while they figure out what's going on. We hope that they see that intention of what you want to happen with your child so that they can then reach out to my brother. That's what will happen if CPS gets involved. So what can you do now? Gather documents from the Immigrant Safety Plan. As we said, the Immigrant Safety Plan is on our website. We just added the Spanish version. Spread the word and tell people it's free. You do not have to be a lawyer to fill it out. In fact, we now have an automated program that we are going to add to our website that allows you to fill it out on your phone, and it will ask you questions, and then it will fill the documents out in both English and Spanish. We have those languages now. At some point, we are going to try to get other languages. Help people fill out these documents if you understand them. And if you're an English speaker, you have a big advantage. Help other people if you can. Share the information that Mojdeh is going to talk about, which is know your rights information. It's the best way for people to understand what their rights are. And please be safe and take care of yourself. I know it's a scary time. Cuídense. Questions? And I'll stop sharing my screen.
All right, Chach, we have quite a few questions. I will start with the first one. Is there a third party we can write if we want to revoke a POA? For instance, if the person caring for the children will not communicate with a parent.
And they have the children? If the third party has the children and they will not communicate, show up, call the police and go to their house and say, these are my children, show them the birth certificate, show them the written revocation, and then they should say, these are her children, and give them the children.
Thank you. The next question is, I heard that POAs may not be honored by CPS in some states.
That may be true. This plan is specific to Washington state. And so it is according to Washington laws because I practice in Washington. We have asked CPS in Washington and DCYF to honor them. And we are working through that. In other states, you can also ask your DCYF or CPS to honor them and work with lawyers to get them to.
All right. The next question is there a way for community members to help fund the cost of parents getting passports and birth certificates for their children or provide rights?
That is a great question. Moshe, do you know the answer to that?
I mean, I don't know if there is a GoFundMe place for this kind of situations.
Yeah, you know where I think I would reach out to is WISN, Washington Immigrant Solidarity Networks, because they have a lot of people that need this help, and maybe they could connect people. That's where I think I would reach out to if you are able to help fund or also provide rides, what have you. And they're a statewide organization.
That's actually a really good point, Josh, because they already do this with the bond fund,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So they have, yeah, the infrastructure in place. to
Yes,
do
so I would reach out to them, and they are in our resources, and they'll be in Moshe's too.
Should we send the power of attorney to the school?
So I think of it this way. The school, it's none of the school's business whether you're undocumented or not. The less the school knows about that information, probably the better. They do not want to have power of attorneys in their records. All they need to know is who picks up your child if you're not available. That is sufficient. Now, if my brother comes to pick up my child and they say they will ask for his identification, and if they're like, well, I've never seen you before, he can pull out the power of attorney and show it to him and say, I have the rights. Give me my niece or nephew.
Awesome. In what language is the power of attorney accepted in?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. The reality is we live in an English speaking state. The best language to put it in is English. We just, for Spanish speakers, we just added a Spanish one where you can fill it out in Spanish and it has English right alongside it so that you can see how the English version works right next to it.
The next question is, should undocumented people in the US also get a passport from their country, or is that less of a priority?
That's a good question. It depends what you're going to use the passport for. If you can afford it, probably good. If you are going to be deported, I don't know each country. I don't know if that's the best form of it, of documentation or identification, or if there's other identification that works just as well. I almost would have to defer to each country's consulate, and you may know more about your country than I do.
Can you share an example of how the POA should look like?
That's a good question. And in the actual immigrant safety plan, we have an example. And so I don't want you to have to make it up on your own. And we also separated the power of attorney on our website, so you can just pull up the power of attorney. And then you can just follow it exactly how it is. You could either print it or write it out, however, fill it out, or you could do it on a computer. And again, we're going to add another link where you could fill it out either on your computer or your phone, and it will actually fill in the power of attorney for you.
My son and daughter are 18 years old. Can they be responsible or act as a guardian for my younger children?
They can be the third party, anyone over the age of 18. You just have to think about, can they care for your younger child? Like, can they feed them? Can they clothe them? Can they get them to where they need to go and school? And if they can, then they're perfectly fine.
What do parents do for their adult kids with disability where they already have guardianship?
That's a good question. The adult guardianship laws are a little bit different. And there's something called a standby guardianship. And so I would suggest that you talk to a family law attorney, because in this standby guardianship, it only goes into effect if something happens to the guardian. And since you already have an adult legal guardianship, you probably need a standby guardianship.
How can programs who serve families become trained or offer this as part of their wraparound services?
So, as far as how do they get trained to fill out the parent's intention or the power of attorney, you do not need to be a lawyer. All you need to do is be able to fill out the forms with somebody. You can go to our website and watch this video again, and then you can also read through the whole immigrant safety plan, and it has the information there, and it also has frequently asked questions. And then just fill it out.
Okay. Esto también es para los que tienen la visa U.
I think whether it's for people that have a U visa, and I'll answer in English and then in Spanish. I think it's for anyone that has a child under the age of 18. If you're a US citizen and you're detained, you have no rights necessarily for due process. Yo creo que este es para toda la gente, si tienen visa U o si nomás tienen hijos bajo de los 18 años. Aunque son ciudadanos americanos, si alguien, si los inmigrantes, la inmigración quisiera, es posible que pueden, que no te pueden dejar ir, y qué van a hacer los niños en ese tiempo.
What if there is an absent parent that has no contact with the family but is on the birth certificate?
That parent should sign, because here's what happens. If, let's say, I have a child and there is a father listed on the birth certificate, and the father has disappeared. If something happens to me, that father has the first right to those children. It does not matter that he's been gone for 10 years. He is still the father. So if you can, you want them to get to sign that. However, if you can't find that father, we put a line in there that says the father abandoned or someone abandoned, and you can write for 10 years and sign it by yourself, and hopefully people just try. Somebody hopefully will still honor it.
All right. And this is the last question. If parents are out and about with their children and are picked up by ICE, will they allow parents to call a third party to pick up the children?
Moshe, this is going to be your question. Are they allowed a phone call?
Yes, and they should assert that right. Whether or not ICE will allow them is a different story. So, screaming at a bystander, the phone number of whoever that they need to call and ask them to call should be another option.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was
Go
going to say,
ahead.
I think we want to think of this as almost like an earthquake plan. We don't want this to happen, but you want to be ready. And so you want to memorize certain phone numbers. You will not have access to your phone. Remember that. So memorize phone numbers. And then also you want to tell your neighbors or your children, if I don't make it home by X time, call your uncle, call whoever, because something may have happened.
Yeah, actually, right, Judge, if the children are actually able to use the phone, you can let the children know at the time, right? Here is the phone, call.
Right.
Yeah, awesome idea.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so very much, Judge.
Thank you. Now for Moshte.
All right. Just give me a moment, everyone, to get myself situated. All right, can you guys all see my presentation here?
Yes, you're on the, know your rights. Yes,
Oh, my apologies. All
there
right.
you go. You got it.
Okay, thank you so very much. Good evening, everyone. Like Chach, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. I hope you are all safe and staying warm. We have an unusually cold weather tonight. As Chach mentioned, my name is Mojde, and I am one of NERP's co-deputy directors. NERP, our organization, is one of the largest, if not the largest, immigration legal services organization in the country. We provide our immigrant community with all types of immigration services, including deportation defense, meaning that if a government is trying to deport you by putting you either in detention or telling you that you have to go to an immigration court, we will assist you and in many instances actually come with you to the court. We also sue the government when the government violates our client's constitutional or statutory rights. So tonight, here we go. Tonight, we are going to talk about our community's rights. Why are we doing this? The administration, this administration, really hopes to instill fear and dread in our communities. It might be that they hope that this fear prevents our community members from actually attending their houses of worship or going to their medical appointments or sending their children to school. And we want to combat this fear-mongering that the administration is engaging in, the tactic that they're using, right? So knowing your right is a very, very important tool because it provides our community with knowledge, and knowledge is power. It may prevent our community members from getting arrested, and we will discuss this in a bit. And should the government violate our community members' rights, the community member is aware and can report that. So this is why it's very, very, very important. Now, what rights are we talking about? Tonight, we're going to concentrate on two rights. But before we start that, I want everybody to know that everyone in the United States, regardless of your immigration status, has certain rights, right? Two of your constitutional rights are the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution and the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. The Fourth Amendment to the Constitution protects you against unreasonable searches and seizures. As we will discuss in the next few slides, you will see that the extent of this protection depends on the location. For now, I will just say that the Fourth Amendment right is the strongest when you're at your home and is the weakest when you're in a public place. We also have the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment to the Constitution gives every single individual the right to remain silent, the right against self-incrimination, meaning not to provide evidence against yourself, and the right to speak to an attorney. Now, unlike the Fourth Amendment, which has varying degrees of protection depending on the location, your Fifth Amendment rights carries with you no matter what. You always have the right to remain silent. You always have a right to not incriminate yourself, and you always have a right to speak to an attorney. All right. Now, you have these rights. After tonight, hopefully you will know them and practice them. What if ICE violates these laws? You can go to court and tell a judge that, hey, listen, this is what happened, and ICE violated my rights, and I want you to tell ICE to not do this again, or provide for other remedies. You can let the community know. So the community is empowered with this knowledge and knows how to deal with ICE. And you should also know that these knowing your rights and recording the violation of your rights may assist you in your immigration case if you are, God's willing, detained. Let's go back to your Fourth Amendment rights. Now, as I just mentioned, your Fourth Amendment rights are the strongest when you're at your home. Why is that? Because at your home, you have an expectation of privacy, right? So, of course, you have a right to remain silent. Remember, we said your Fifth Amendment carries with you everywhere. In order for ICE to enter your house, now we're talking about your Fourth Amendment, unreasonable searches and seizures. In order for ICE to enter your house, they must either have a judicial warrant, we'll talk about that in a second, or they must get your permission to enter the house. Now, you may ask, what is a judicial warrant? In this slide, we have put two warrants next to each other. The warrant on the left is a judicial warrant. On the top of it, it says there is a name of the court. In the bottom, it says the name of the judge and it's signed. In the middle, it says who is going to be searched or arrested. And it has a 14-day window. This is a warrant with which ICE agents can actually enter your house, but we'll discuss this a bit more in detail. The one on the right is an administrative warrant. It's a warrant issued by the Department of Homeland Security. ICE agents cannot enter your house if the only thing they have is that administrative warrant. So I want you to familiarize yourself with these two different types of warrants. The one on the right, ICE does not get to come in. The one on the left, you have to review very carefully. So this is what you do. If ICE agents come to your door and say, open up, we have a warrant, you will ask to see the warrant, not by opening the door, by asking them to slide the warrant under the door. You will then review this warrant to make sure it is a valid warrant. Is it within the 14 days? Is the warrant actually for you or somebody that resides in the house? Is it signed by a judge, right? If any of these is not true, do not open the door. In Washington State, chances of ICE agents obtaining judicial warrants, the one on the left, is very slim. So our general advice is don't open the door. You do not open the door if they only have a DHS warrant, right? Don't give them permission. Another trick that ICE agents may employ is to say that there are somebody else, right? There are IRS agents, there are the police, there are the FBI. Ask for a warrant, and if they don't have a warrant, don't open the door. And ask to see the officer's badges. We will discuss the interaction or the lack thereof between Washington State's local and state law enforcement and ICE agents in just a brief moment. All right, so this is your right when you're at home. It's the strongest. What happens if ICE agents stop you when you are driving. Now, ICE agents are, and CBP, and by CBP we mean Customs and Border Patrol, are allowed to pull people over if they have a reasonable suspicion or an administrative warrant, right? Because now you're in a semi-public place. They can ask for your license, registration, and proof of insurance, and you should provide them, preferably by opening the window just enough to provide them with those items. If they have an administrative warrant, ask to see it, make sure it is for you. And if it is just, they're telling you that they think that you're here unlawfully, ask them why, because just the fact that you speak another language or you're from another race or ethnicity is not sufficient. If they do not have a warrant, ask them if you can go, if you can leave. Regardless of whether or not they have an administrative warrant, my apologies, regardless of whether or not they have an administrative warrant, they are not allowed to search the car. For searching the car, they need the judicial warrant. So that's the warrant on the left side of the previous slide. One thing that I want to note here is that in Washington state, we have the Keep Washington Working Law, which was enacted in 2019. This law provides that Washington state's local and state law enforcement should not cooperate with ICE, which sort of makes sense, right? You don't want these resources to be used for civil federal enforcement practices. IRS does not use federal or local, state or local law enforcement. Now, if there are times when our state or local law enforcement violate the Keep Washington Working, we call it KWW, they will be sued. For example, NERP recently sued the Adams County Sheriff's Department for violating the Keep Washington's Working law. So be careful when you are driving. Note that they can use your license, they can ask for your license and registration, but they cannot arrest you because of your race, ethnicity, or the language that you speak. That is not reasonable suspicion. All right. What if you're in public? This is where you have the least amount of protection. Remember your Fifth Amendment right? You can refuse to answer any question, especially about your criminal or immigration history. You can remain silent. You have that constitutional right. Ask the officers why they stopped you, if they have a warrant. If not, inform them that you are refusing to speak with them, or allow them to search you and you want to leave. Let them know that you can leave if you are not under arrest. If there is an administrative warrant for your arrest, then the agents can arrest you. If that is the case, please remain calm. Do not answer any questions. Tell them that you wish to speak to an attorney. Very importantly, please do not run. Do not resist arrest. Do not endanger yourself or give them any reason to be violent. And do not lie. Do not provide any fake documents. We think that people who are at most risk to get arrested in public are people who have had previous interactions with either immigration or with Washington State's court system for some reason, right? So for example, there is a previous removal order, ICE agents know of this person's unlawful status and their whereabouts. So those people are more likely to get picked up by ICE. One thing, although that is not the only reason, I mean, ICE can go after everybody who is here without documents. Do remember that just because you're arrested doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. There may be relief available in immigration court for you. For example, you may qualify for asylum if you were persecuted in the past or harmed in the past by a government official or somebody else in your home country because of your race, your nationality, your religion, your political beliefs, right? And you're afraid to go back. You can apply for humanitarian forms of relief. For example, if you were a victim of a crime in the United States, or if your spouse was abusive towards you, you can apply for family visa if you qualify. So just because you are arrested is not at all necessarily the end of the world, the road for you. All right. Now, we are also going to talk about situations where spaces that we are talking about have both the private space and the public space. Now, school buildings are definitely, or schools generally are definitely one of this, right? So school buildings are a private space, right? Meaning that ICE agents can only get in a school building if they have a judicial warrant. They cannot get into a school building otherwise. However, schools' parking lots are a different story. They may be able to get into a parking lot because everybody else can get into a parking lot, right? Unless whichever school district is limiting who can come in and get out of the parking lot. In Washington, schools do not interact with immigration officers. We have actually linked to the Washington Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. There is a memo. I strongly urge you to review this memo. It does say that Washington State does not share information with ICE, and they do need a judicial warrant. And then another thing that they do say is that should ICE agents have a warrant to come and arrest a child, that the school district will try their best to let the parent and or the guardian know that an enforcement action is taking place. Houses of worship are the same, right? So they have a public area where congregations gather, and then there are private areas, right? The office and what have you. For the private areas, there needs to be a judicial warrant. For public areas, since everybody can enter the public areas, no. Hospitals are the same, and Washington state courts actually have a policy in place that says that unless there is some huge emergency, ICE agents cannot enter the courthouses to make a civil immigration arrest without a judicial order. We have also linked to the Washington court's website where this is discussed, and I encourage you to please read that. Why? Why does Washington courts do this? Because they actually want people to come and take care of the business that they have before the court. They don't want people to be scared and then be even in more danger or have their whatever type of case they have go sideways because they are just too fearful to show up, right? All right, and then we are talking about large-scale raids and worksite rates. I put this slide here because I thought it's important to speak about it just for a few minutes, but really, we do not think worksite rates are going to happen much in Washington State. It hasn't happened much before, so we are hopeful that that is also going to be the case now. So ICE, should it happen, likely what's going to happen is that ICE will attempt to arrest a community member in a public area of the business with an administrative warrant. Remember, because it's a public area, the administrative warrant will do the trick. My apologies, let me just backtrack for a second. As with all spaces, businesses also have private areas and public areas, right? So if you are in a private area, ICE agents cannot enter with a judicial warrant. But if you are in a public area, then ICE agents can enter because everybody else can enter. If agents come to your place of employment, what is most important is to remain calm. ICE might arrest individuals because they either have an administrative warrant or somehow they know of one or two people who do not have proper status. But then what happens is that ICE may arrest many other individuals, right, who are also in the vicinity. It is very likely that ICE has no reasonable suspicion to arrest the other individuals who are also in the vicinity, which is why it is absolutely and positively important that should, in an unlikely event that a raid happens at your place of employment, that you should remain silent. Do not give them the reasonable suspicion. They won't have it otherwise. Just remain silent and tell them that you want to speak to an attorney. That's all. All right, now let's end with a couple of good news. DACA lives, which is a very happy news. I'm sure most of you know Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals has been with us since 2012. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals just issued a decision in mid-January. What you need to know is that for people who are currently in DACA status, they can just keep on renewing their DACA status until future notice. So nothing has changed. And one of this administration's most infamous executive orders was taking away the birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment. As one of the judges said, it is so blatantly unconstitutional. So there is now a nationwide injunction, and that right has not been taken away, and it's unlikely to be taken away. So that is my presentation for the day. Last but not least, we do want to provide you with a list of resources. So the first three are LCYC, Chacha's organization, LCYC Washington, and then NERP.org, that is our organization. WISN, I am sure many of you are already following WISN, but for those of you who don't, please check them out. They are an extremely important statewide organization that provide you with correct, up-to-date information in various languages. And then we have the PIS Coalition for Health and Services Access and Rights, For nonprofit or law immigration attorneys, you can check out immigrationadvocates.org. For private immigration attorneys, you can check out the American Immigration Lawyers Association, AILA. To find other legal help, you can also go to the Justice Departments for a list of nonprofits. For non-immigration legal help, you can go to washingtonlawhelp.org. And then we have also put the links to the school policy and the court policy that I was referencing in my presentation. And that is it for me. Thank you so much.
Okay, Mojde, it's my turn to ask you questions. If ICE has an administrative warrant and they found a person in a public space, can they detain the person?
If they have the administrative warrant for that person, yes.
So it
And
has
that
to have
administrative
that
warrant
person's
is
name.
valid, right? I'm sorry, Judge. Sorry,
I'm sorry. It has to have the person's name, correct?
Exactly. It has to be that person, right? Yes.
Yes. Okay, can you explain why is the right to remain silent so important? It's something we say at all your Know Your Rights trainings, but in the moment, it's very hard to remain silent. So why is it so important?
Thank you for asking that question, actually. That's an awesome question. Here is why it's important. Believe me, I understand how frightening it is to deal with this in the moment. I actually was arrested by ICE myself. I know how it feels. 90% of the time, well, I'm not going to say 90%, I don't know, but a lot of the time, ICE does not have a reasonable suspicion to arrest you. They don't know anything you do. They're just spitballing. You are, by speaking, by providing them with information, you are giving them the reasonable suspicion. Which is why we say, please remain, don't say anything.
So many times people will say themselves that they're undocumented, correct? If they start talking.
Yeah, exactly. And that is the last thing that you should do. And also, let me re-emphasize this, that do not lie. And do not provide false information or false documentation. Just remain silent and say you speak to your attorney.
And what do you say? I would like to remain silent.
Exactly.
I am remaining silent and I would like to speak to an attorney.
Exactly.
Okay, and you could just repeat that over and over.
You know, actually, if I may suggest, you should repeat that at home before anything happens. You should get it into your system that this is exactly how you're going to react. So God forbid, if the time comes, you are ready.
Yes. Yes, and it's those two sentences. I am going to remain silent. I would like to speak to a lawyer. Over and over. Perfect. If you're arrested and asked for an attorney and cannot pay for your own, what do you do to get an immigration attorney specifically?
Call them. Call us. Call the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project.
And how would I know that number if I'm arrested?
All right. Awesome. So we actually have 4 offices. We have our Tacoma office, and our Tacoma office actually has a detained, a unit that focuses on working with people who have been detained at the detention center. If you go to our website, you will get all that information.
Great.
All the details. Yeah.
And what are some examples of when a judge would sign a warrant for someone?
You know, I mean, what I can think of is if there is some kind of crime involved, but that would be for the criminal part of it, right? Not for the immigration side of it. In Washington State, I would find it very, very, I would be surprised if we get judicial warrants only for civil immigration violations.
Got it.
Right? Criminal violations are a different beast. I'm not talking about that. This is for civil immigration violations.
What can Customs and Border Patrol or an ICE agent require of someone in a car if they have an administrative warrant, not the judicial warrant?
All right. So if they have an administrative warrant, they have established that you are here unlawfully, right? So they can arrest you. Remember, have we discussed the Fourth Amendment protections strongest at home, right? And weakest the more close you get to the public, right? If car is somewhere in between because you're still in your car, but you're on the public road. So if they have a warrant, they can arrest you. But remember, check the warrant. Is it for you? Right? Always. I mean, if there is a warrant, check the warrant. Ask for the officer's badge, get the information, and then remain silent.
And are they allowed to talk to the passengers in the car?
They really shouldn't. I think there was a lawsuit about this, right? They cannot be arrest of other people who are, it's the same thing that we were talking about the worksite rates, right? That they have like a warrant for one or two person, but then they gather a whole bunch of people who are working at that site, right? They shouldn't, but that doesn't mean that they don't.
And when they
Which is why it's very important for you to insert your rights.
And remain silent.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
So even if they detain you or put you in removal proceedings, then it's you will fight this. You say this arrest was unlawful.
So what if I have DACA or some other, like I have a U visa pending or VAWA or another petition? Should I tell the immigration officer that?
I mean, the only time that I would suggest that you be proactive about communicating a status to an ICE officer is one, that you have that status, right? Sorry, I lost my my train of thought. I mean, like when you are at the point of arrest, do you know what I mean? I wouldn't just blurt it out. Like, I see an ICE agent, I'm just going to say, oh, but I have this pending thing. No, you always assert your rights first, right? Now, if they start handcuffing you, then you could say, I have a pending application.
Right.
But always, but I would, if they're arresting you, they're arresting you. So.
Right. So
but
it could be
that would be a deportation defense. Remember that even if they do arrest you, it's the defense against, like removal, your removal from the country. Like I have this pending application.
Right. Right. So they might arrest you anyway.
Yeah.
And you just don't want to lie, right? And say you have this defense when you don't, or this
exactly
thing, because they'll use it against you.
Right. There was this memorandum that, of course, the Trump administration revoked, that said that, hey, listen, if people have pending applications under the humanitarian forms of relief, we are talking about U visas, VAWA, right? Then the preference is to not arrest them, but that memorandum has been revoked now. So,
how do people find someone that has been detained?
Give me just 1 second. I actually had pulled this up. It's an ICE locator. So locator, locator.ice.gov.
And so they go on that website and they could put in their name.
Right. A number.
Their A number. What if
Right.
they don't have an A number?
I think they can also search by name. Yeah, they can also search by name.
Okay. And so that's a good place to go if you
Yeah.
have not heard from someone.
hmm
And can they call someone in detention? Or only the person in detention can call out?
Yeah, the person in detention calls it.
Got it. Okay, so memorize those phone numbers. Don't expect to have your phone. Can ICE arrest a person if they are going to their court hearing with an immigration judge?
Can they? Yeah, but that is very unlikely. I mean, why would this person is already in removal proceeding?
Right.
What is the point of arresting somebody who is, and the person is actually showing up to court, right? It's not that they are a flight risk or something, right? So can they? Sure. Will they? I don't think so. At least not yet. You know, I mean, I do realize that the community is afraid. I do realize that this administration has promised to deport 11 million people, but even they have to prioritize, and I just cannot see this to be being a priority.
And I would also like to add that people should feel safe in state courts system. ICE cannot go into state courts. So if you have a family law issue, what have you, and in theory, all of the police should not be working with ICE. So if you have a domestic violence situation or something like that, please, please call the police. Do not be in a violent situation because you're afraid of ICE. The police should not be working with ICE in the state of Washington. What happens if you're outside of your house on your property, or if they come when your door is already open?
Make sure to tell them that they are not allowed to come in, that you are not giving them permission to enter the house.
And shut the
keep
door.
Keep repeating that they do not. Sorry, Chuck, I didn't hear you.
I said, and shut the door.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes. And a lot of times, the only way they're allowed in your house is because you said, come in,
Right. Mhm.
because it's polite.
Right.
Do not be polite.
Right. And please tell the children do not open the door to strangers.
Yes. What do you do if you don't have someone in the house that can read English to inspect the warrant?
That is such a good question. For one thing, I do believe that ICE has to provide interpretation in such situations. Though don't quote me on that. I believe there was a lawsuit a little while ago that said that, hey, listen, if you are going to arrest a person who speaks a specific language, you need to make sure that you're providing that person with interpretation. I mean, hopefully, they have slipped that warrant under the door, right? Because you're not going to open the door for anyone. And you can take a picture of it, if you can, on your phone and send it to somebody who can let you know what it says.
So here's a question. Say my door does not allow, there's no space to get the warrant under, and I don't have a window next to it. How do I see the warrant?
I mean, be imaginative. I don't know. Put whatever the lock thingy is.
And open it a little.
Yeah, to just get the warrant.
Okay. You could also ask the officers to just leave the warrant.
Exactly.
And then you could look at it.
Right.
But don't
and walk
open it.
away.
And walk away. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. If ICE is trying to detain you and you ask to speak to a lawyer, will they let you speak to a lawyer before or after they take you?
It would be ideal if they allowed you to speak to a lawyer before they take you. Remember that if you are at your house and you haven't opened the door, you can always call the lawyer, right, before you do anything. But chances are that you are just going to keep requesting and asserting your rights, right? That I have a right to remain silent. I want to speak to my attorney. You probably won't get to do it till after you have been detained.
What can the community and employees do if ICE shows up while a person is working in a public place, for example, a gardener, and wants to forcefully take an employee?
You know, one thing that the community can do, if and only if they feel safe, is to record what's happening, right? So grab your phone, make sure you announce it for one. And then if you feel safe, record what's happening, because that may be useful to this individual's case later on, especially if there is unlawful conduct happening.
You talked a lot about reasonable suspicion. What constitutes reasonable suspicion? And is a traffic violation reasonable suspicion?
No, a traffic violation is a traffic violation, right? A reasonable suspicion. So we are talking about here, really what we are talking about is racial profiling, right? So we are saying that, listen, this cannot be racial profiling. You cannot detain someone because they look like me, just because they look like me, or they speak with an accent like me. You know, that you should have more than that. So what is a reasonable suspicion? I don't know. ICE can have followed this person or somehow looked them up and knows that this person lacks documentation. Yeah.
I would also like to add that do not speak another language in front of ICE and say things. Many of them speak Spanish particularly. So don't say things to your friends and then say that you're undocumented because they're listening. Okay. I have two more questions. If someone wants to share the resources and have conversations and check in with families, but they don't know how to begin the conversation without making people fearful and also feeling like they're being intrusive. What should they be doing? How can they help?
You know, the idea is to empower our community, right? Not to force knowledge down anybody's throat, right? We want to empower people so that they can fight the injustices that are coming. I would be very respectful and ask them how you could best assist them, and that you have these resources, and if they want, you would be more than happy and willing to share and assist in any way possible. I don't know, Josh, what do you think?
I also think that these resources should be shared with everybody so that it's not just immigrants, right? If everybody has this information, then you're not just singling immigrants or undocumented people. And then on the immigrant safety plan, if they have a child under the age of 18, they should have this. My children are now adults. I didn't have this. I should have had one of these. It doesn't matter that I'm a citizen or not. So I think I would just spread the word. And then if people come to you, they can ask specific questions about their situation. How can I be connected to the community and report the case, any cases or raids from ICE?
WISN, Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network. Really, this organization is one of the best resources we have in the state. And not only they can connect you, they can also provide you with information. They can update you about any raids that may be happening in your community. They can provide you with updates on the Know Your Rights or any policy changes in Washington state. So I strongly urge every single person on this call to check out WISN's website.
And I would also like to add, because I saw this question later, that when people get passports, they should not be asking the parent for their status for a child. All you need to show is your identification. If someone asks for your status, do not answer them. It's none of their business. Same thing with Social Security cards for a child. Anything having to do with the child, they should not be asking for parent status information. And I think that might be it. We're, I think, running out of time. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Morste, before we leave?
No, just that I am very grateful that you all stayed on this late in the evening. I hope you find this information useful. Keep fighting on. Thank you.
And I'd also like to echo what Morsta says. Thank you for your time. Please be safe, help each other, and please share the information. It's free. Please share it with anybody and everybody that needs it. Take care of yourselves.